First reading's from Isaiah, and I just want to warn you, it's a long one, and I made it longer. I was reading it over and over this week. It came in the lectionary as a suggested reading, 1 through 9, and as I kept reading it, 10 through 12 was really positive and awesome, and I was like, why did they leave that part out? We really need that. So it's a super long reading for Paula, but I think the extra part, it was meaningful to me, so enjoy.
This morning's reading is Isaiah chapter 56, verses 1 through 12. Shout, a full-throated shout. Hold nothing back, a trumpet blast shout. Tell my people what's wrong with their lives. Face my family, Jacob, with their sins. They're busy at worship, and love studying all about me. To all appearances, they're a nation of right living people, law-abiding, God-honoring. They ask me, what is the right thing to do? And love having me on their side. But they also complain, why do we fast when you don't look our way? Why do we humble ourselves and you don't even notice? Well, here's why. The bottom line on your fast days is profit. You drive your employees much too hard. You fast, but at the same time you bicker and fight. You fast, but you swing a mean fist. The kind of fasting you do won't get your prayers off the ground. Do you think this is the kind of fast day I'm after? A day to show off humility? To put pious long face and parade around solemnly in black? Do you call that fasting? A fast day that I, God, would like? This is the kind of fast day I'm after. To break the chains of injustice, get rid of exploitation in the workplace, free the oppressed, cancel debts. What I'm interested in seeing you do is sharing your food with the hungry, inviting the homeless poor into your families, putting clothes on the shivering ill-clad, being available to your own families. Do this and the lights will turn on, and your lives will turn around at once. Your righteousness will pave the way. I just lost my place. Will pave the way. The glory of God will secure your passage. Then when you pray, God will answer. You'll call out for help, and I'll say, here I am. If you get rid of unfair practices, quit blaming victims, quit gossiping about other people's sins, if you are generous with the hungry and start giving yourselves to the down and out, your lives will begin to glow in the darkness. Your shadow lives will be bathed in sunlight. I will always show you where to go. I'll give you a full life in the emptiest of places, firm muscles, strong bones. You'll be a well-watered garden, a gurgling spring that never runs dry. You'll use the old rubble of past lives to build anew, rebuild the foundations from out of your past. You'll be known as those who can fix anything, restore old ruins, rebuild and renovate, make the community livable again. So ends today's reading.
Today's gospel message is from Luke 10, 25 through 37, the story of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the Good Samaritan. And now that wasn't the original pairing with the earlier reading. And I was going to go with the lectionary this week, and the more I thought about it, the more, and I don't want to get into a pattern of beating to death certain stories, but this story to me just really goes beautifully with the Isaiah reading and that hymn that Nancy picked that I had nothing to do with. As we were singing, I was like, oh, that's perfect. So thank you for that. God, we ask that you bless our hearing and help us to hear something from you. Just then, a religious scholar stood up with a question to test Jesus. Teacher, what do I need to do to get eternal life? He answered, what's written in God's law? How do you interpret it? He said that you love the Lord your God with all your passion and prayer and muscle and intelligence, and that you love your neighbor as well as you do yourself. Good answer, said Jesus. Do it and you'll live. Looking for a loophole, he asked, and just how would you define neighbor? Jesus answered by telling a story. There was once a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. On the way, he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, beat him up, went off, leaving him half dead. Luckily, a priest was on his way down the same road, but when he saw him, he angled across to the other side. Then a Levite showed up. He also avoided the injured man. A Samaritan traveling the road came on him. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfecting and bandaging his wounds. Then he lifted him onto his donkey, led him to an inn, and made him comfortable. In the morning, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take good care of him. If it costs any more, put it on my bill. I'll pay you on my way back." What do you think? Which of the 3 became a neighbor to the man attacked by robbers? The one who treated him kindly, the religion scholar responded. Jesus said, "Go and do the same." Thus ends today's reading. I love, as you know, I'm wacky about the Jesus, and he can really tell a story. And every time he does, it's a kick in the pants. It's a curveball. It's never. And I wish we all had the context of these stories so we could appreciate the sarcasm he sometimes throws out there, the snarkiness, the way he plays stuff, where he says, good answer. This is a scribe. This is a highly educated man in this culture, in this hierarchy, who's probably much higher than Jesus. Jesus was an itinerant preacher without any training. And Jesus tells him, good answer, when he answers the obvious answer. And he's congratulating him and telling him, yeah, if you could do that, you got it. And I think about hypothetical principles. Sometimes, what does that mean? What am I talking about? This week, I thought about a friend of mine. His name is Mike, and he's a wonderful comedian. And years ago, Mike was doing, and I don't know why I remember this, but it jumped out at me. It stood out to me. And Mike does a lot of benefits for different charities, and he's always doing some benefit for something. And Mike said, hey, and you usually do these on like a Wednesday because people have gigs on weekends that are paying gigs, and if they're going to volunteer time or do a charity where they're going to make less money, they do it on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So it was some night when nobody ever has anything to do. And Mike says, hey, I'm doing this thing. And it was something, I feel bad, terrible that I can't remember what it was. But it was like, blind children with no kneecaps. It was some like really tragic case, and it was around kids. And he sent out an email like, hey, I'm doing this, if you guys can come support this, it would be great. And it was on one of those group emails. So like 20 people respond, oh, I'd love to do that, but I got this. I'd love to be there, but I got that. And he emailed back to the whole group. So what you're saying is you would hypothetically support blind children. Hypothetically, you're in favor of supporting these kids. And I thought about that. He was being a smart acre and being a little smirky, which isn't really his style. But that's like, gosh, that must be at least 10 years ago. And I've never forgotten that because it applies to me all the time. I'm like, oh, I would hypothetically help those people. Absolutely. I remember going back, gosh, this is closer to 20 years now, when I was doing a very rigorous spiritual inventory, and kind of trying to find who I really am. Who am I really? Not who I think I am. Because we, much like our conception of God, we have the God we think we believe in, that we tell everybody we believe in. God's wonderful, God's this. And then we have what we really think, what we're kind of afraid of. Well, the same thing applies to me. I have the me I think I am, the me I actually am, right? And the me that you know me to be. There's three different people there. Right? I don't know if that sounds crazy, but that's really a real thing. That's a real thing. And I think the idea today is to find out who I actually am, and it's okay, and accept it, and then move toward who God wants me to be. And that's what we're doing as a group, as a congregation. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have that exciting congregational meeting. I can barely keep my breath right now because this is going to be fantastic, where it really is exciting, you know. I can't believe I'm saying that, and I mean it, but it's true. It really is exciting. And we're going to be really trying to dig down and say, okay, where are we? Where are we at? And God, who do you really need us to be in this time, in this place, like right now? Who are we really, and where are we being called? Who are we being called to be? So I remember looking at that spiritual inventory and writing, and there was this glorious part of this inventory where I got to write down all the horrible things that you've done, and people have done to me, and the world has done. And I got to really give it to them with both barrels. Now, unfortunately, the turnaround of that is that I have to look at the reality of what's really going on. So let me tell you, I had a lot of resentments. But one of these resentments, I really resented Republicans because they didn't do a thing for homeless people. Nothing. And I really resented liberals and Democrats because they talked about doing a lot for these folks and drove by them in limousines. So I resented both people. And the turnaround of that was I had never done anything for a homeless person. Zero. I hypothetically cared about homeless people. I had a good heart. Not really, because if I did, right, I thought I had a clean heart and a good heart. If I really had that, I would have done something, and I would have spent less energy blaming these other people for doing nothing and done something myself. And I found that was the case pretty much all the time, over and over. You know, and I look at us as a nation, if you want to go broader, we hypothetically have amazing principles. Amazing principles. But I still can't wrap my head around this Standing Rock thing and how nobody really cares. We hypothetically care. And for those who don't know, Standing Rock is a Native American reservation, Standing Rock Sioux. It's in North Dakota. And there's basically an oil company that is sort of, this would be definitely a biased interpretation, but I believe it's the truth, is in cahoots, in collaboration with the Sheriff's Department and the National Guard. Basically, there's been quite a long resistance to this, peaceful resistance, and all kinds of weaponry has been used against these people. It never made any mainstream media until it was overwhelmingly on social media, and they kind of had to half-ass cover it in a very lame way. And now, that's really kind of over. We've got so many other things. We're worried about what did Donald tweet this morning? Did he comb his hair over to the other side? This is really riveting stuff that we got to be absolved with. Meanwhile, Standing Rock, missile launchers. There are missile launchers at Standing Rock. Have you heard about that? No. Why not? We don't care. We don't really care enough to do something about that. If we did, we'd do something, right? We got 5% of the world's population. 25% of the world's prisoners. Why? I don't know. So I'm not in prison. What? What am I worried about? Now, I've volunteered in about somewhere between 16 and 20 prisons. So I've got a little bit of experience with that. And every prison's the same. There's no difference. And this may not be a popular opinion, but as I've gotten to know the guys in the prison, they're not really any different than the guys who put them in prison or us on the outside. Now, that's my experience of 20 years. Other people may have different experiences. That's a lie. That's my experience of about 15 years. I haven't been in the prisons in about 4 or 5 years. Not much. See, I hypothetically tell the truth. Yeah, I hypothetically tell the truth. And I try, but in my best efforts, I'll twist it. I'll twist it in spite of my best efforts. So who are we really? Who are we really? Why? And you have to care to find out this stuff. Why do we have so many people in prison? There are reasons for that. That's another sermon for another day. There are reasons there are so many people in prison. People make a lot of money off of people being in prison. There are reasons. This week we had a reverse of a law that allows coal companies to put pollution, I don't know what else you would call it, toxic chemicals, into streams. Do you care? Do you know? You got to care. You got to do something or not. But we got to be truthful about what our real principles are. And what our real principles are reflected in the actions that we actually take. Not in what I think and what I think would be nice. It'd be nice if this happened, if that happened. I think it'd be nice if everything was covered equally, or if everything was honest and above board. Did anybody hear about last week there was a shooting in Canada? You heard about that? Yeah, you heard about that one, right? How much would we have heard about that if it was a Muslim kid who shot up a church? It'd be on the news. It'd still be on. It'd be on right now. They'd be trying to find a way to broadcast it through Doug's panes of glass. Some news sources still had it days after that the guy's name was some long Arabic name. The guy was a witness. They got it wrong and left it out there. Well, why do we really need to beat this to death? I mean, it's just let's move on. Let's move on. What's a good tweet? Let's talk about that. So we have to find out what are our actual principles. That applies to us at Chaffin, too. That applies to us here. So in a couple of weeks, who are we really? Now, I think we're a lot of good things. There's a lot of really beautiful stuff about this place. There's a lot of wonderful people here. And the chief thing I've gotten since October, since I got here, is that you actually do really care. That's a real principle. You have a principle of family in this church. You actually care. You don't pray on Sunday and forget people. Doug and Jan have been prayed for, and I say this all the time. Every week I've been here since October, but people go and see them all the time. They have visitors every week from this congregation since I've been here. I wish I was able to do that. There's not enough time for me to do that. I've been there, but not nearly enough. But you guys have practiced ministry, have really practiced that principle of care and concern and acted on it. That's what counts. That's what counts. Showing up for each other. And there's a lot of that here. There's a lot of that here, and it's very beautiful. You're hard workers. That's a principle that I've seen. Some of you people really need to take a break and get out of here sometimes and and stop cleaning stuff and go home. But that's a principle. And we've seen it play out. So we have to ask ourselves, what are our principles in a couple weeks? Who are we? And more importantly, how is that going to manifest now, here and now, in Holden, in this community? What is the need of Holden that God is calling us to follow through and provide? Is it to be like the spiritual practice church where there's, there's stuff 3 nights a week? Is it to go? I have no idea what it is. And neither do you. So that's the exciting part. We're going to find this out together. And then, with God's grace and help, we'll actually do it. We'll actually do it. Now, we can't fix Standing Rock, and we can't get the prison system cleared out by ourselves. We can't do these things. But what we can do is our thing, whatever that turns out to be. It can move from a hypothetical principle to actual practice. And we can do it. There's no lack of work ethic in this place, I'll tell you that. Maybe we don't all need to be polishing the same, shelf or the same counter. Maybe there's other things we need to use that energy for. But there's no lack of energy or willingness to commit to do things. Now, you might have to do something you don't like. You might have to do something that's outside of your comfort zone. So in March, there's another exciting, riveting event. Massachusetts, UCC. I don't even know what it's called. What is it called? Super Saturday, right. It's even got an exciting name, Super Saturday. And I've been to this before, and John and Carol went last year, and there are many, many workshops at this thing that we need to know about. And John and Carol and I, we can't cut it. We can't cover it. So we need like 15, 20 people to go to this thing. All of us go together. Each of us gets to go to 2 workshops. And then you don't have to head the committee for the next 10 years, but just find out this stuff that will help us to determine whether we're going to revitalize, what it is we're going to do, and pass that on to the rest of us like a family. When one person in the family knows something, they tell the other. In my family, my father knew everything, so none of us got to share anything. But that's not like this here. You all have skills that maybe somebody else doesn't have. And you can all learn something that maybe we don't all have. We need to learn more about stewardship. There's a stewardship group. Revitalizing Sunday service. There's a group for that. There's a meeting for that. And we can all do this together. But it is going to be a group effort. If we're going to succeed. And I know we can. I absolutely believe in this joint. And I just ask that God really bless us with perseverance and open-mindedness, because it ain't going to look like it looks probably, and that's going to be a little bit tough. But it's more important to do what God's calling us to do than what's comfortable, and that's a tough one. That's tricky. But over time of just trying to get closer to God, if that's all we do, is just try to get closer to God, you'll find that God will find a way to get you into that position. I really was legitimately annoyed about the homelessness situation. I never planned to go into homeless ministry. I never planned to go to seminary. I never planned any of these things. God, one step at a time, led me down many. If you look at the picture on the front of your program, there's all these different paths. God's will for us is not one preordained thing that God came up with 13 billion years ago, and I just need to figure out what it is and paint by the numbers and do it. God can guide us down any path, and if we're going with God's guidance, it's going to be successful, whatever it looks like outside. If we could do that, that is success. So over that period of time, I did end up winding out working in a street ministry, and I did end up in prisons for a long time, and that hadn't been my plan. But through doing my best to, and gosh, you guys know I'm a nut job. I mean, let's face it. And if I could do it, I do the best I can, and I throw the rest aside. If I could do it, I think we could probably all do it. Come on in. I'm not going to take it personally that you came in at the end of that riveting message. It's safe, kids. He's almost done. Come on. Let us pray. God, we thank you for community, for family. We thank you for that spiritual compass that you've put inside each of us. We even thank you for prophets like Isaiah in the prophetic message of Jesus and shared in his parables that we don't like to hear. We even thank you for that, because we know if we can just listen and put aside our ego and our own comfort zones, we're going to get closer to you, and that's the goal. We want to be closer to you, God. We thank you for the opportunity to do that, and for family. And I ask that you bless us with patience and tolerance and compassion for one another, because it ain't easy. It ain't easy. But we know that with your guidance and your loving hand, we can do it. We can get there. And for this, we thank you. Amen.